begin here, which when we talk about Salesforce, the possibilities of using an email address, they expand exponentially, I would say. There's a myriad of ways that you can navigate through Salesforce using email addresses. You can connect dots that maybe you didn't even know existed, like campaign members, contacts, cases, leads, opportunities, custom objects, tasks. You can trigger flows with it. And the potential is really limitless here. It's one of my favorite pieces of data of all time. It gives you so many combinations at your disposal. So it can really help you streamline those processes and ensure your data is right where you need it. So we're going to bring those concepts to life today. Joelle's going to be taking the stage. She's going to demonstrate the power of the email address in our various critical connectors. And you're about to see firsthand how everything can transform with your data management. So Joelle, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kayla. So before we get too far into showing how an email address moves through a Salesforce connector, for anyone not used to our Salesforce connector or hasn't used it before, you can set in your Salesforce connector it up so that it quickly, efficiently, and accurately sends data from your form and your respondents directly to Salesforce upon submission of your form. You can also use a pre-fill connector to pull that data from your Salesforce into your form for your respondents to see. So wide variety of uses with our Salesforce pre-fill connector and submit connector. And with this, Form Assembly is really the perfect partner to Salesforce. You can set in the Form Assembly Salesforce connector exactly how the data you've collected is to be sent to Salesforce. So you really have that full control over it. You can use the email address to search and pull up the exact records that you need to update or create unique records based on. So let's go ahead and see an example of how you can take an email address through your form and into your Salesforce connector to take care of multiple steps in your process. So give me just a second to share my screen. And here we go. Okay, so to start off with, I just have this event registration form that we'll be using for this example and throughout today's webinar. And this event registration form is just collecting the registration information that I'll then need to send to Salesforce to keep track of the people registering for the event or to limit registration. So in this registration form, again, we're just asking for that primary registration for the guest and then any guests that they have. And I need all of this information in Salesforce as we track each event as a campaign record and each guest as a campaign member. Each event I host has a limited number of guests that I can accept. So I need to be sure that I'm keeping track of that in my Salesforce so that I do not go over the number of guests I can accept for each event. So keeping this in mind, we can go to our Salesforce connector and start getting this information to be sent to Salesforce. So I'm going to come in here and click configure. And I already have this connector all set up, but the first step in it is going to go ahead and just finding that campaign record. I can do this in the form of a Salesforce dynamic pick list in the form. I can pre-fill the campaign ID for that event into the form. There's a variety of ways I can get that campaign ID into the form, so I can use it here in my connector and find the exact event I need to use in my Salesforce. Then once I've got that, I have the contact, and that's where this email is going to really shine and be able to do so much for us here in this setup. That email is how I use the contact, find the contact, or create a contact based off of if I found it or not. And that is how I'm then able to update or create the campaign member records. I wouldn't be able to do either of those if I didn't use that email to find the contact. I would receive a Salesforce error if I didn't have that contact mapped. So just being able to quickly see and get that all set up here. And once taking it kind of a step further, I can often use a roll-up summary field in Salesforce to keep track of how many campaign members are signed up for this campaign. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek over at my Salesforce. So looking here, I've got this campaign, this fundraising dinner, where I can scroll down and I can see the total number of registrants. This is going to be a roll-up summary field. I can keep track of how many people have registered. And then I can also set however many people I can accept, or in this case, this is a volunteer event. So I need 10 volunteers. I can have then a formula field that is saying, okay, I still need 7 volunteers, because it's taking that volunteers needed minus the total registrants. And I can use that number in my form by pre-filling it or whatever I need to, so that I can show to my respondents whether they can sign up for an event or not. I could even add validation to these fields in Salesforce. So when the max number of guests or volunteers is reached, an error will prevent more related campaign member records from being created. Then, because Form Assembly is a perfect partner to Salesforce, we respect Salesforce validation rules. So when Salesforce prevents record creation, we also prevent record creation in the connector. So no one else will then be able to register for the event through your form. You can even set up a custom error message to let your respondents know that they can't register for the event. We'll see a little bit of how to do that later in the demo of the webinar with our workflow demo. So as I also mentioned a minute ago, you can use the Salesforce prefill connector to prefill how many spots are needed or the campaign record. So when your respondents are opening the form, they can see right away how to do this. Now, what does that Salesforce prefill connector look like? So for this one, I've got one set up, but let's just go ahead and create a brand new Salesforce prefill connector, because I just want to show how easy it is to set up. So for this one, I want it to be able to show exactly right away on form open how many spots are still left and what event they're registering for. And I don't have to use a pre-filled link if I set it up this way. So when I have it set up, it's taking a second. There we go. So when I go to configure my first lookup, I can go to that campaign and search the campaign ID. And instead of using like a parameter, which I would normally use to pre-fill a link, I'm just going to go ahead and select a formula. I can then grab that campaign ID from my Salesforce, paste it in here, and then now every single time this form is opened, it's going to immediately look at this campaign ID, and I don't have to worry about that pre-filled link. They'll just use that normal form link, and we can come in here and map all the fields that I would like to have. So that campaign ID, so I can use it later in my Salesforce connector, and then also the spots still available, I can map to the volunteers still needed from my campaign record. And now that is just one way I can really make it easy on my respondents to submit my form and see all the information they need immediately upon opening the form. And so this is just one of the ways you can use Salesforce to really kind of process that critical data that you're collecting from your respondents and kickstart any other processes that you have for your data needs.